More.
There's Desta.
And
We'll
Grant,
start.
there's Gwen. I don't know if you can see everyone.
Yes, I'll
Hi.
introduce Gwen.
Okay,
We'll
because she can't
introduce,
stay
give
for
me a
long.
couple of the people that are going to be here today. I usually note out people here, but I've got my little, I was at Tim Hortons and I have my little napkin and I've got all my little notes here. Well, we'll start. I'm going to out Desta first. Desta is my assistant who helps. She's the person behind. She keeps people's audios off when they're not speaking, because what happens is if your audio is off when you're not speaking, you basically come on the camera and people don't realize they're on camera. So Desta is in behind, but Desta's just published her second book. Desta, tell us a little bit, give us the name of the book and tell us a little bit about what this is about.
Grant. It did.
What?
Maybe people don't even know you've got books out. You spend a lot of time with your mother. Your mother helped you edit it. And this is one of the reasons I linked up with Desta, is because Desta does channeling. And I basically say that if you want to know what's going on, you have to interact with people who are in contact with the intelligence. So I spend a lot of time listening to people who are doing channeling or mediumship or have encounters with the beings. I'm very interested because I think that's the only way you're going to learn what's going on. So Desta, the reason we linked up is because Desta was doing this kind of channeling and I was very interested in this, and she lives in my city, and she has, maybe people don't know, she has 2 books out, but the second book just came out a couple of days ago. So maybe she can tell us just maybe even the name of it and a little bit, and people can look it up.
Well, it didn't. I couldn't post it last night, so it should have come out last night. But so it'll take a couple days. But it's called. It's called. Oh shoot. Oh, sorry, I just cut something off here. Hold on. Oh darn.
While you're looking for that, I'll notify people that Desta edits and puts up all my books as well, and has helped. We've done a few books from various people, and so she's been a great help. She doesn't want to be in front of the camera. That's why we're having this hesitation here. She's more in the background, but if you'll see her at conferences, she's at a lot of conferences, the Manchester conference, the StarworksUSA conference. She'll be going to the Consciousness Life Expo next week in Los Angeles. If you're there, you can link up with Desta. She's usually behind the scenes, talking to speakers, running things, and so she's the mover and shaker and knows way more people in the field than I do. But she does do authorship. So
on the count of 3, come on. 1, 2. You can do it. You can do it.
I'll put the link in the description. It won't be out for a couple days, and I'll just say it's just channeled messages. So there's not a lot that I actually wrote in the book. It's just I used to channel every single night, and so if I would get big messages, some of the messages they would say that I should be sharing them with other people. I never thought of actually writing a book. Grant convinced me to put them all in a book since I was helping publish some of his books. So, and I know how to do the self-publishing. And so yeah, I compiled the last one. And then I just had a year of doing a bunch more messages, and some of them, they were much, I don't know, better quality or something than I thought that the other ones were. So when I get enough and it looks like it's enough for a book, then I just compiled them all into a book.
beautiful.
So it's not out yet. It'll be out in a couple of days, but I will grab the link here. I have a link somewhere here, but it won't even be out on Amazon. It needs a couple of days to process there, but it should be out in the next couple of days.
Beautiful.
Great.
So anybody that's wants to get a hold of that, and if you have any questions, you can always put them in the chat box. And Desta, next time she's channeling, she will try to get your question. That's what I was doing. I said, ask him this, ask him that. It's like you've got sort of a connection to the field, and I've seen some of the stuff, and maybe I can just say something for Desta, that she was sort of shown at one point how to do this. She was trying to work on it, and they just sort of said, this is what it feels like. And so she doesn't really recall what she's typing out until the next morning. So it's one of those things where she's sort of dissociated from what's actually coming in. And so I think the messages are important. I've seen, you know, the stuff she does, and I think it's important for people to at least read and consider.
That's great.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay, that's our first item. Thank you, Desta.
Yeah.
Our second, we have some people from Europe again. I think we have Hazel here. And is Aneta here from Macedonia?
Oh, yes. Hi. Hi.
Hello, you made it this time. Good. So we have people
Yes.
all around the
Right.
world. And Aneta contacted me. She is photographing and interacting with energy beings. And I talk a lot about energy beings. In fact, there's an interview that'll be coming out on my White House UFO YouTube channel where I interview Sinead, who's helps me with interviews. And we talk about the energy beings that she encountered during an ayahuasca experience in Peru a few years back. So welcome, Aneta, and maybe you can jump in at some point during this thing and talk a little bit about your experience and so people know this isn't just an American phenomena, this goes around the world.
Great.
The other one I have is Gwen Farrell. Now, unfortunately, I'm not a morning person, so Gwen runs the. If people don't know that this started, the reason for this session is based upon what I used to see at UFO Congress, which was the big event in the Southwest United States where people would come, 1,500 people, UFO lectures and stuff. But what a lot of people don't realize is that early in the morning, they have what's called an experiencer meeting, where people from all around the country come in to talk about their experiences. And it's done very first thing in the morning, because it's sort of like a, almost like the idea I had. It's like an Alcoholics Anonymous thing. It's sort of very confidential thing. It's held in the back room. People don't really know what's going on. You're not really expected to attend unless you're an experiencer. And so Gwen runs this for StarworksUSA in Laughlin. And this happens every November, and I get to be one of the circus acts there to come in and speak. But this runs very early in the morning. And so if you're an experiencer and you're at either StarworksUSA, or if you're at UFO Congress, or a number of the conferences are now hosting these things early in the morning, where people will come in and people get very emotional because this is sort of like their family, because they really can't talk about with their friends and their relatives. And so they're in this room with other people who have come from around the country, and they're all telling their story about this encounter and trying to get support from other people. So maybe Gwen, you can maybe just say a little bit about what you do and how you got into this and why you think this is important.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's always great to hear Grant when he talks at the conferences, and Laughlin is a great conference. If nobody's been there, I highly recommend it. I know Grant will too. It's a wonderful little conference to go to. I've been doing this work as an experiencer therapist for about 12 years. And I was a certified hypnotherapist before that and had other training to do this field specifically. But these experiencer groups are a great opportunity for people who attend these conferences, get together and just share. Share the experiences that they've had with interdimensional beings, extraterrestrial beings, or whatever paranormal experiences they've had. Some people want to talk, some people just want to listen. It doesn't matter. Everyone is welcome to come, and they're always fun, they're educational, and it's just a real family develops. People come from year to year, and they're always really a wonderful experience that people have. So I was at Laughlin last year. I've also worked at the International UFO Congress, which is down in Phoenix, and hopefully we'll be doing that again this year. So I wanted to, something that I wanted to mention today is, like this meeting that you're in today, I co-facilitate another online experiencer group. Meets with another experiencer therapist, and we meet first and third Sundays of every month on Zoom. It's the same kind of setup this is. So the first and third Sundays from 1 to 3 Phoenix time, which is Mountain Time. And if anyone is interested in stopping into that meeting to chat, all you have to do is contact me at my email, which is etherapist.gf gmail.com. And you can get information about that. We'll send information out to you and to tell you how to get into that. And that is also for anyone who wants to come, who wants to share their experiences or who has questions. We cover all aspects of the human ET contact experience, and that's everything. Anyone who's interested in learning or sharing is welcome to come to that as well. Because as all of us who are involved in this know, sometimes it's really hard to find people who are willing to listen to you. And even if you don't feel like you need therapy, you really need serious work with someone, sometimes you just need somebody to chat with. And you have Grant and Desta and people who are writing wonderful books about this. Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody face to face. So groups like this group that we're in today and our group can be really helpful that way. So I appreciate being able to stop in today and tell you about my group. If you're interested in it, please come in. It's free. It's on Zoom, and you're welcome to stop and just email me for information, and I can get that information for you.
Beautiful. So that would be tomorrow you're having an event.
Yes, we have a meeting tomorrow, and then the next one will be on the 3rd of the month. And I do co-facilitate that with Michelle Emerson, who is another trained and experienced therapist. She's been in the business and in the field about as long as I have, doing investigations, doing research, and doing therapy with experiencers in private practice and in groups as well.
Wonderful. Maybe you can put your email in the chat box for people who don't know. If you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a little chat clicky thing you can click on, and people are putting messages in there, talking to people, and so you can put your link in there. I certainly will be attending because I think this is important. What I sort of have mentioned, because I've been in this, I always say I've been in this since before Jesus was a carpenter, and I've been in it a long, long time. And what is happening today didn't happen 45 years ago. I can guarantee you that.
Right.
And so the way I see this is, I always refer to the analogy that we are like the gays of the 1960s. That it's sort of like there's more and more people coming together. The groups are getting a little bit bigger, and these groups are starting to take off. And I think this is one of the things that we're sort of waiting for the government to disclose or to do something. And yet, I think that if you get the messages from whatever the intelligence is, they will state, and I believe it's going to come from the ground up, that the politicians will not move until there's a lot of pressure from the ground. So it's the people on the ground who are the experiencers who are having these encounters that will move this thing down the field. We can't be sitting there waiting for the government to do something, because the government, in terms of, if you follow people like Chris Bledsoe and other experiences that I know, the government is watching them. Because they don't know what's going on, so they're tapped into experiences, trying to figure out why people like you and I and all these people have had experiences. You know, how do we get contact? What's going on? Who are we dealing with? They're trying to figure it out as well. So I really appreciate that. And anybody who's coming to Laughlin, they're going to do what's the theme next year? It's artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah. So that's the theme of the conference, and it runs. Laughlin is one of my most favorite places in the world. If you're there, and runs the first week of November, the weather is beautiful. It's like 20 Celsius Canadian or 70, 75 American. It's right on the Colorado River. It's not like it's a casino town, but it's not like Las Vegas. Like, the only people that go there are UFO people and old people. So there's no huge traffic jams. You can walk up and down the strip of casinos, and it's right along the Colorado River. So they have a river walk. It's very beautiful there, and very cheap. You can actually stay there, say the day after the conference or 3 days after, and it's like $25 a night for like a hotel room, which is as good as anything in Vegas. So I really encourage people to come down there, and you'll run into people. I think, Gwen, I think you'll agree that it's at the conferences when you sort of get to a conference. It's not so much the lectures that you hear, the speeches, it's the people and the associations that you build behind the scenes, that these become your family. You'll see people come every year, and there's all sorts of hugging and that takes place as people are coming and going. And it's quite a thing where you actually interact with people and you realize there are people who have a story just like you.
Sure. That's absolutely right. And something I also wanted to mention, Grant, is that there have been changes in this phenomenon over the past 8-10 years that we have seen, and I know you have seen it. And those of us working in the field, I call it those of us who work in the trenches, those of us who are really working in the field have seen these changes. And we are feeling it. And so by coming together in these groups and coming together at conferences like Laughlin, we're feeling and we're sharing these changes, because this is not a stale thing. This is a living, breathing experience that we all have. And it's so important for us to realize that and to, share that.
Beautiful. From time to time, because I deal with a lot of experiencers, I run into people who want to explore through regression. And I know Desta does regressions, and you do, hypnotic work or whatever term you use, regressions. What area of the country are you in, for anybody who might be in the area who might want your personal services in terms of dealing with their experience?
Well, I'm in Phoenix. I am actually retired, so I don't accept any new clients at this point. My colleague, Michelle Emerson, co-facilitates the group. She is still very active in accepting clients. So when people contact me, if they want to contact me through that email, I always refer to her because she's still very active in doing the work.
Beautiful.
So we're both in the Phoenix area.
Beautiful. I'll be there. Do you go to the meetings, the Phoenix meetings?
Oh, absolutely. I'm very active in Phoenix MUFON.
Beautiful. I'll be there in September. I'm going to be lecturing there in September, and that's one of the maybe the biggest in the country. I mean, Orange County is pretty big, but Phoenix, I mean, you folks down there have done an incredible job of turning a group, which was like 5 people at one point. Now it's like just scores of people show up at this event. It's and because you have so many people, you can actually bring in people from all around the world, some of the top people. So I acknowledge the fact that you guys are doing a really good job down in Phoenix. And Phoenix is beautiful weather. If you're down there, it'll be a little bit warm when I'm in there in September, but it's a beautiful place to go. And if you are in Phoenix area, make sure you go to the group that's run by Stacy and Jim. It's an absolutely fantastic once a month event down there.
You can find it at Phoenix MUFON on the line, and you can see who's going to be speaking and everything. So, but then if you're down in September, you'll be down there for the UFO Congress.
Yeah, I'm there, I think, just before. That's usually what they do, is they run one with the UFO Congress at the same time, and split that off. So yeah, it's Phoenix is one of the better places that I hang out, and I think Desta goes down there too.
Yeah.
We were actually down there for quite a period of time. I think it was last year or the year before. So thank you for that. Another person I want to acknowledge is Donna Lynn here. Is Donna Lynn here, Desta?
She's supposed to be, but I don't think I see her yet. Hold on.
She's unable to make it because the timeline for her is 11 a.m. and she'd already arranged something with her granddaughter.
Oh, okay. Because Donna Lynn was going to come. She had written a book, and I wanted her to stay a little bit.
But she does say she will join in.
Oh, okay. So hello, Hazel. You got any new stories? Anything happening in Spain?
No, sadly not. But I do want to say, one thing, and that's that there was quite a few rude comments or bad comments on the YouTube after the rabbit hole went out last week.
Wow.
And please, for anyone in this group, take no notice of them. Because if you're going to take notice of things like that, you're never going to come forward and say what you want to say.
Yeah.
So if you're
I agree. What we have to remember, I think, with this is that we are no different than any other social political movement, that we're going to come under sort of attack as it goes along. And that you have to sort of stick to your truth. And if you take a look at the African American movement, there was a lot of real bad comments made about them in the 50s, 60s, 70s, a lot of bad movies, a lot of bad jokes, and they sort of came out the other end and are ahead for the game. So it really doesn't matter what people are saying. in the end, I've seen the final chapter, we win. So that's the end of the story. And
but I wanted to let people know that are sitting on the sidelines that have maybe not spoken before, just do what I done last week and jump in and get on with it.
Thank you, Hazel. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to comment on that? Because I let Desta. That's what I do. Is when people say to me, "Oh, they really don't want to talk," I say, "Well, the rule is the rule I use. You don't watch anything you ever do. You don't listen to anything you ever do on interviews. You don't watch the comments, and then you really don't care what you say because you're not going to really know what people are saying." That's why I hand it off to Desta. Desta does all the removing the comments. She reads all the bad ones, and if there's somebody who needs help or something, she'll forward those messages on to me. But I literally do not ever read the comments because you wouldn't sleep at night. It's like people. That's sort of their idea. There's two different things that I always say, because I sort of have people know who I am. So what happens a lot of times, you'll see people will go after me. There are people who are they want a voice, and the idea is if they can steal your power, if you've got a story that people are listening to, if they can put your story down, they get your power. So there's part of that. And there's people who are very afraid. That's why Donna Lynn had written a book called From Fear to Love. And that's basically what it comes down to, is that when you first get into this experience, there's a lot of fear. You don't know what's going on. You're looking for some. And I've seen it over and over and over again, that once a person understands what it is, it's suddenly they go from fear to like, they're a messiah. They've got this message for the world, and you can't shut them up because they know what's going on. So that's what I basically find. And that's, I think, the free survey. If you're familiar with the survey that Edgar Mitchell and Ray Hernandez started, that looks at 3,200 experiencers, they basically show that if you look at the people who are very fearful of what's happened versus people who think it's very sort of the best experience that ever happened in their life, one of the big factors that comes down to is how many experiences have they had. The people who are very, very fearful, when they poll them, they find out they've only had one experience. The people who've had a lot of experiences and regressions and stuff like that almost never see the thing as a fearful thing. In fact, they put out the figure, if you could stop this phenomena that you've experienced over all these events that you've had, would you stop it? 84% of people say no. Do not stop it. Let it keep going. And most people will think, because the media puts out it's a horrible type thing, and these intruders are here and they're interfering and all this kind of stuff. If you actually do the poll with the people who are involved and are having the experiences, you see this thing. 85% believe it's a good phenomena. They don't want it to stop. And only 9% believe it's evil. And you start seeing exactly the opposite statistics that you would read in the media. Okay. Anybody got some comments? I'm going to go on to another controversial subject.
I do. I have a comment.
Go ahead.
So I'm a first timer, Grant. You know, I've been laying on the sidelines and keeping my camera off in the past. So you got me, buddy. Desta, congratulations. Glad you got your book done. And I'll just, before I say what I'm about to say, is even though I don't feel quite messianic, I have something to read to you that might be along that line.
Okay, good.
It's part of my experience. I seem to wake up with stuff and have just things pop into my head from time to time that come from places that just make no sense, knowing who I am, which is basically a dork. As you can tell, I have a good sense of humor. I have a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I woke up the other morning and I had seen one of your YouTube videos, Grant, and you were talking in this video about how a group of you at the last StarWorks conference, when everything was over, some of you were sitting around a table at one of the restaurants, and somebody convinced you to give the Russell Targ's ESP trainer a try.
Oh, yeah.
And it was your first time. And so I actually just wrote up some of my thoughs here a little while ago, and I'm going to do better if I just read it. So hang in.
Go ahead, Ron. Go ahead.
So when Grant was in Laughlin at the end of StarWorks conference this last November, he used Russell Targ's ESP trainer for the first time. and got his first 6 hits correctly. The story goes that a group of presenters and staff were at one of the restaurants around a table, and Grant was encouraged to give the SP trainer a try. They finally convinced him and told him that he would be rewarded with a chime and a picture of a pleasant scene when he guessed correctly, or get a slight electric shock if he did not.
Exactly.
Now here's my need to know, Grant. Did they really say that to you?
The
Did you
shock
believe
thing,
that?
yeah, I think that was what motivated me. It wasn't I was trying to get the right picture, because Paul Sperry from Denver was the one that was doing it. And I said, you just want me to get a shock from your stupid cell phone. I don't want to get no shock. And that was the thing. I was trying to avoid the shock rather than get the picture.
Yep, that's exactly where I went. I have the ESP trainer on my iPhone, and seems I am not as good as Grant. But I wasn't pranked into believing I would get a slight shock. So because I am pretty much a dork with a sophomoric sense of humor, this gives me lots of chuckles. Sorry, Grant, I can't help it. But check this out. Here's what popped into my mind next. My mind started thinking about how ESP skills, intuition, telepathy, clairvoyance, clairsentience, and such, just might be the highest priority for humanity's potential that we need to develop, and soon. It's about survival. The subconscious mind prioritizes survival and avoidance of pain. If humanity does not establish a quotidian imperative, a reference to a book that I read a long, long time ago called The Territorial Imperative, we are at risk of extinction. We are going to destroy ourselves. Without developing the ability to discern deception from truth and to anticipate pending dangers and opportunities, we are definitely going to destroy one another and all life on Earth in the process. The word quotidian was introduced to me by Stephen A. Schwartz, author of The 8 Laws of Change, during an interview with Jeffrey Mishlove on his YouTube channel, New Thinking Aloud. For a good understanding of the meaning of quotidian, I am going to refer you to those sources to most benefit your full comprehension of this concept of our quotidian imperative, is what I call it. It is definitely not about competition for territory. Shorthand would be straighten up and fly right, take care of the earth and one another with every choice each of us makes, minute by minute, day by day. Now, like I said, I'm a dork. I do most things in humor, but this came to me in full seriousness, and it had to come from the source, which I think is the original intelligence, which brings me to my last dorky comment. Here's a good idea for a t-shirt. Love, the original non-artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Right on.
Okay, hand it back to you guys.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Anybody got a comment? You're from Vancouver or Victoria, Ron?
I'm from Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay. So you're close you're in that vicinity.
Up in the neighborhood. Yeah, I think Harry and Megan are probably getting all settled in up there somewhere.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
You know, nice there in the neighborhood. And Archie.
Archie.
Okay, the last person I want to call out here is Janet and Miles, or I think they're here, correct? You want to open your microphone?
Oh, they're mute again here.
Janet and Miles. Oh, you got to turn your mic. Let's get
there. We go. Yep, we're here.
Okay. Welcome. You were at the Winnipeg. You're in the Winnipeg group. The last time we posted, or I posted on my Facebook that I was speaking at the Winnipeg group. You and Miles said, "Well, you know, where's this in Winnipeg?" And we told you, and you showed up at the meeting. And you sent me some orb photographs. We're going to get into orbs here. And I've got a PowerPoint that I did with your orb photographs. So I will take over the
Awesome.
and you can sort of describe. This is another very controversial subject, and all UFO photographs are controversial. People will say, no, it's either not good enough, it's all, why is it out of focus, all this kind of stuff. Or if it's too good, well, then they say it's too good, you hoaxed it. And so UFO videos, I really sort of don't try to prove anything with them. And you had some orb photographs that were taken north of Winnipeg, and you have offered the Winnipeg group to go out with you and get these orb photographs. So let me take over the screen, and you can sort of talk. And just as a little something to say just before this, the fact that I've got a lot of people who've got these orb things. In fact, I saw these objects back in 1976 is when I first saw them. They weren't even known as orbs. That's why I tell people, you think that what happens now happened then, and what happens then happens now. It's a completely different world. We didn't even have the word orb in 1976. We called them ground lights. And then when I asked the Canadian government guy who I knew, he said, oh, you mean monitors? And I went, oh, yeah, okay, monitors. I sort of played along like he knew. So I've received a number of orb photographs, and the one guy I was going to invite today, but I didn't, is another guy from Winnipeg. His name is Jim. And Jim was sending me similar type orb photographs that were taken with an iPhone 5 video photographs of these orbs flying around and stuff like that. And people will always say, well, this is dust particles or whatever. And my objection to that is that they're usually moving pretty fast. And the ones that Jim was sending me, if you look at these orb photographs that people take, especially in bedrooms, what you'll see is when the orb is coming at 30 or 40 miles an hour at the camera, it never hits the camera. It always veers off just before it gets to the camera. So and the reason I bring up Jim is Jim had one, and I can't show the video today because he's not here. I really don't have his permission to show it. But he had the one, and I've shown it before. People have seen it. It's an orb where he actually gets cured. He's about to have a cancer operation. And this happens the night or 2 days before he's to see the oncologist. And this is one of these particles that suddenly becomes a huge ball of light and goes up, and it's a blue, and it goes up above him, and he's filming this whole thing, and it goes into his body. Very dramatic orb photographs. So there's a lot of these things around, and eventually maybe we'll have one whole episode just on orbs. People can bring their orb photographs and show them. And the reason I bring up Jim is I don't know if Walter is on here. Sinead and I interviewed Walter Zucker and Reverend Kevin Lee. And this is an interview. It's a 2.5 hour interview that Desta is going to break up into segments. It was an interview that we did last week that deals with what I think is like the paranormal, the Super Bowl of all paranormal phenomena, and that is physical mediumship. And they sort of got me into this, and they're bringing a guy into Florida into physical mediumship, and his name is David Thompson. And what they have with David Thompson, they strap him into this chair, they gag the guy, and then these beings start to appear, and Louis Armstrong appears, and he starts singing, and all this weird stuff starts happening. Spirits are coming and stuff like that. Stuff is flying around the room and stuff like that. And the thing is, the reason I mention him is because at the end of the seance, usually he's found with his sweater inside out and backwards. And they actually tie up, as I understand it, they actually put tie straps on the buttonholes to prevent this. And yet the shirt is inside out and backwards. And I always talk about contact modalities, that I say the UFO phenomena and all these other phenomena basically I think are the same thing. Because what you find in a lot of experiencers will describe, and Jim was one of them that told me this story, that he woke up one morning with his t-shirt inside out and backwards. And he had this fluid on. It was actually sent to Kathy Martin to be analyzed. So he's an experiencer who's had some very bizarre experiences, including this inside out and backwards t-shirt thing. And you see this in physical mediumship with this thing. And so the question was always asked with people thinking that it's sort of alien abduction is, well, what's wrong with these stupid aliens? Can they not put the people's shirts on properly? And I think it's just something that they put the t-shirt inside out and backwards to make you think, no, this isn't a dream, to make you think about it. So Jim had a lot of very interesting orb photographs. And I'm also friends, Desta has met Sergio Lube. If you go on the internet, Desta and I stayed with Sergio Lube in California, and he's a very sort of prominent guy, spent a week with the Dalai Lama, and he's done an entire documentary on orbs. So orbs are very controversial. So let me take over the screen here, and then Janet can jump in, and we will, hang on, we will go through these orb photographs. And some of these were taken, correct me, Janet, these were taken at Sedona, correct?
Yes, some are at Sedona, yeah, and some are at our place. So, hang on, I'm going to turn the volume.
Getting an echo off your audio here, so
I have mine on as well. Okay, so you're going to turn one off? Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay, so we're...
Just a sec, I've got to get a hold of the screen here. I'm
okay.
kind of confused. Okay, share screen. I'm taking over the screen now. Share. So you'll be able to see, can you see my screen?
It's just black right now.
Can you see my screen should be on the, everybody should be able to see my screen at the moment.
Okay. That's Lower Fort Garry.
Yeah, this is Lower Fort Garry. So you're right across the street, correct?
We're across the river from it, actually.
Okay. And so let me explain to people who aren't in Winnipeg. We live in the coldest major city in the world, although it's been like spring the entire winter. I think we had one cold day. But this is where Winnipeg started at Lower Fort Garry, which is just north of the city. Actually, my relatives were on the second boat coming in. Scottish people came in. So this is the actual fort that starts in about 1810, somewhere in there. And it's just north of the city of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And this is where this phenomenon is taking place. And you're across the river. This is the actual fort. It's been, you know, renovated to be a tourist trap. And this is, but these, it starts in Sedona. So maybe go through as I go through these photographs, describe,
okay.
and to back you up, if people are aware of Kim Carlsberg has photos that were taken at, I think, exactly the same spot. And hers are just unbelievable numbers of orbs. So describe, this is at the Brantford Ranch, correct?
No, this is actually in our backyard.
Okay, this is your backyard.
So just to go back a little bit, we started at, are you still on there? Okay. I mean, maybe I need to turn, is that better?
You're coming through clear now, yeah.
Okay, so in 16 we went to down to Arizona, and we met with Tom Dongo, and we went out on one of his UFO tours. He was actually retired at the time, but he took us out, and we shot a bunch of orbs with him. And then when we came home, you know, a couple of years later, I decided to try and shoot some orbs. So these are actually in our backyard, because this is 2019. So this is also in our backyard. Now, we had people over for supper one evening, and the gentleman is of First Nation descent. So with our property being across the river from the fort, we know from history that there was a lot of First Nation people camped there because they would trade with the fort. So it was very interesting because James, you know, can feel energy and stuff. So we had a nice supper. We went out in the backyard and we're shooting orb photos. And some of these photos with him there, he could feel the energy. So it was a very interesting evening.
So what does James interpret these as being? What's the Aboriginal view of this?
Miles, what do you think?
He seems to think that they are souls.
Souls. Okay. And that would be sort of common with people who are, you'll hear often experiencers say that the being comes out of a ball of light that's in the room. There's an orb flying around the room, and the being actually comes out of the ball of light, which would sort of figure into that.
The interesting thing about these orbs is we don't see them until we take a picture of them. So we're not seeing them lit up. I think you sense them. I sense them when we're out there. But we're just using a point and shoot camera, just a little point and shoot, and
Wow.
and with a flash. So when we were out with Tom Dongo, that's what he was saying he gets the best pictures with. So I couldn't even tell you the settings on the camera or anything, but you set it for a flash. You go out there and hold it still and flash. This one is taken in Arizona when we were on tour with Tom Dongo. So you can see the different colors, the different shapes and sizes there.
And this is relate to Bradford Ranch in terms of a lot of people believe there's some sort of paranormal phenomena going on at the Bradford Ranch. It's almost like the Skinwalker. Is that correct?
We're about a quarter mile from Bradford Ranch where we got these pictures.
Yeah, with Tom. So we were like there was a hill behind us, and on the other side of the hill was Bradford Ranch. And of course, Bradshaw Ranch. Tom is one of the first people that was in with Linda on Bradshaw Ranch. And of course, his books, he's written some books on it, and he's very, very knowledgeable. All in the whole paranormal. He's got amazing pictures. And tons of orb pictures, and so he's really kind of the one that got us started on coming home and shooting these. So yeah, so it's very interesting.
And the Melinda Leslie does her Skywatch near there too. Is that correct? Where she takes the people out with the infrared glasses?
I'm not sure about that. In around Bradshaw.
Yeah, I think she's in that sort of, because she does the tour there. So Sedona is kind of a sort of, for people who don't know, it's kind of like a real new age place. There's a lot of stuff going on there. People believe there's vortexes. If you look at the people are mentioning Jim Peniston. Jim Peniston, he gets that download message when he touches the craft in Reynolds from Forest, and he gets these locations, and one of the locations was in Sedona. And I remember I went with John Burroughs. And John Burroughs was trying to remember the exact latitude and longitude where this was, and we were running around Sedona trying to find out where this spot was that was in this download thing. And then I remember we posted that we couldn't find it, and then Jim actually posted on Facebook and said, "Thanks for not letting people know where the actual location was." So Sedona is a very sort of mystical place. There's a lot of mediums and a lot of Skywatch stuff goes on there, and it's a beautiful place for people to visit.
Okay, just hold on. Okay, this also with Tom Dongo and in the Sedona area, and this is just an amazing picture because you can see orbs behind orbs. You can see all different colors if you can blow them up. Our camera's got a great resolution, but you can blow them up so far and you can see the corona around the outside and almost the Mandela effect inside, and it's pretty amazing stuff. Also on that trip with Tom, we sat there, and also he would show us different things on the horizon. This is also a picture that we took with Tom.
This was a series of pictures I shot. Actually, I shot 12 pictures in 1 minute.
Okay.
8 of them, 5 of them had absolutely nothing.
Wow. So that sort of negates the dust phenomena thing. If it's dust, it should appear on every one, correct?
On every one too, but it isn't.
Yeah. There's another one.
So, yeah, it's very interesting because, and it's not moisture because of course it's Sedona. It's very
dry. Yeah.
So the next picture I think is the one with movement in it. I'm not sure. Oh no. Once again, you can see all the different colors in the orbs, and you can see orbs on top of orbs or through orbs. So.
And once again, you've seen Kim Carlsberg's photos. They look exactly like this, and they're taken, I think, in sort of the exact same position where she's put them out.
Yeah, yeah. So this is in our backyard again. You don't see quite the color variation, but they're there. And most nights, I don't know. Some nights you just go out, you just feel called to go out. It's just like, it'll be 9 o'clock, and it's just like, okay, I'm going out to shoot orbs. I hadn't really thought about it. I'm starting to take the same path around my yard, so I can locate where the pictures are, trying to get figure out if I know which area they're coming from.
And we're on 5 acres here, so it's not a small backyard.
Yeah, so.
And this is the pile of them here. This is the
Yeah.
almost like
That's
a photo of them.
That's a cluster that we shot when James was out with us that night.
And he had a sense of it, but he could, just sort of out of this corner of his eye. But of course, that only showed up on film. The night was as clear as could be, so we never actually saw that with our eyes. It's just when you take it, it shows up as this huge cluster, which is very interesting.
Just to clarify, that orange light in the center is our yard light.
Okay.
So yeah, that's not an orb. So you get, when you start shooting, you know what things are and what things aren't. So
yeah.
There's the other part of the cluster, which is, I've never seen them that dense. There's a tree on the left-hand side there, right?
We actually sent this one off to Tom Dongo, and he said he has never seen anything like that.
Yeah, those thick orbs, it's just like a cluster. So it's very interesting stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the part of the photo has nothing whatsoever in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really clear.
So, this photo was when James was there. You kind of muse about, there was a lot of First Nation people on that land. If, maybe there is some connection with him being there, if they're entities or just energy, or I know myself, before I go out to shoot, and also when we were with James this night and Karen, we sit and we be mindful or do a bit of a meditation, and just basically hold hands, and we smudged, and just to be loving kindness and invite people in. I don't really know the CSETI protocol. I've watched it a little bit, but just to be open to the universe, and we're here to see whatever you want to show us. So it's, that's kind of what I do before we go out. So
can you explain smudging for people that aren't tuned into Aboriginal culture?
It is local. You use the local sage plants, or some people use sweetgrass. So you just you will light it in a shell. You can do this. You light it in a shell, and then it's a cleansing with the smoke. So you put it over your face, and it cleanses your energy and for positive mindset, and like a religious, I would say religious, or a spiritual thing. So we actually burn quite a lot of sage in our house because it's very calming, and so I think you sort of set the pace of energy, or be welcoming. So these are the orbs again around James and Karen, and it's quite amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. So, coming to the first meeting the other night, I really wanted to meet people to see if they've had other experiences, and see if people would, we could get a group of people that have more experience in this, and maybe do either a CSETI protocol or something in the summer where we could also watch, for lights, or see if we can take orb pictures. I'm not sure where it's going, but I think it's consistent enough. I'm getting, every time I go out, I get some orbs somewhere. So the consistency is there, and I would like people. Miles, do you want to talk about this one?
Well, that's just another cluster that we caught one night, and this was quite a while before these other ones, the larger clusters.
Is this at night, or is this like evening? Because you can almost see the tree outline.
Well, that's because there's a flash going off.
It's taken with a flash, yeah. So now, I'd never seen one of these before either, and we sent these to Tom Dongo.
He found them quite interesting, but
he's seen other clusters, but he says they're just starting to see more clusters now in this stuff. And he
says the cluster activity is picking up. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's something I point to people out, is that what happens today didn't happen years ago, and what happened years ago doesn't happen today. It's almost like a phenomena that's almost like you're watching them turn the pages of a book, and you're watching a different phenomena almost every couple of years. It changes and it grows. And
Yeah.
have you
And
had
we're
any
open
other
to it.
experiences in terms of like UFO stuff, or is this because usually
Well,
all those people around?
yeah, so when all my life I've had different paranormal experiences. Oh, to the left here on this picture, this is the first
Oh yeah.
few times we've seen these snakes or whatever they are. I don't know what they are. They're lights.
Yeah.
And that
orange thing
again,
on the left-hand side there.
Yeah.
that was taken with a flash. So whatever that is,
It's
like
moving
that was
pretty
one.
fast.
Yeah, it's moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see the flashes. It's almost like there's actually, it looks like there's two of them, but we noticed that when we filmed the Charlie Red, when the CKY TV here in Winnipeg filmed the Charlie Red Star, is that you'd get these sort of like break and, you know, and what they interpreted was that the thing was rotating or flashing. So you get that flash, 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 flash as it's going along. And if that's like a quarter of a second or whatever, you know, a tenth of a second that the frame is open, that's a lot of flashes in that very short period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Grant. Janet, I would like to make a comment here. I'm not on. Listen.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've seen orbs all over Europe, United States, and they show up at sometimes like in various times. One time I was over at Chartres in France and talking with people, and they said, "Oh yeah, orbs around here all the time." And I took some pictures and got some orbs. I don't have any to show right at the moment. And they said, "Yeah, but they took a picture inside the cathedral, and there's one that was up in the attic that was 12 feet in diameter, which is just huge." And the other comment I want to make is that James Gilliland at Isetti Ranch shows that he has some stuff on his website where he has huge number of orbs, and he says, "Okay, all orbs over to the right," and all the orbs go one way, and then he says, "Okay, all orbs go to the left," and they all go the other way. So there's some kind of an intelligence interaction that's going on also. So that was just what I wanted to add in there.
That's very interesting. So, well, you know, this isn't the first. Miles and I are both, you know, had different energy experiences. So maybe it's a cumulative. And you'll see this is the red one there too. It's
right in the middle there.
Yeah, right in the middle. That's we didn't blow that one up so much, but yeah, and you don't see them until the flash. So it's not like I can see it and take a picture of it. I go out and I shoot all these pictures, and then we come in and put them in the computer and see what's there. So
okay. So if Brad or Mark Olson are watching, you need to set up an event north of Winnipeg. Get the group together, because they do this maybe once a year. They have sort of a barbecue type thing. This sounds like the prime thing. So Mark Olson, if you're listening, you need to set up an event here.
Oh, there's one more I wanted to.
oh, there's one more that Miles wants to show you. Oh, there's that.
That's the one,
yeah. See, that's one flash also. So yeah, and you know what? Sorry.
No, I was just saying it'd be interesting to blow that up and find out how many flashes there are there. That's an awful lot. It's got to be 50 of them.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. When we were out with Tom Dongo, we saw some amazing stuff. You know, he was showing us stuff on the horizon that would come up and sit there, and you know, it would sit there for a while, and then after it left, he would see the military jets flying around that area. And then the best one we saw was over Mingus Mountain, and he had night vision goggles, and there was a big some kind of energy, I don't know what to call it. It wasn't a craft, but it looked like a great big jellyfish, and it was just pulsating over the mountain, and the colors going around it, and it just looked like a jellyfish. And we watched that for 10 minutes or so. And yeah, it was an amazing thing to see. So next on my list is I want to get some night vision goggles, because you don't know what you're missing, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, we'd love to set up something out here in the summer, and we got lots of space for interested people. So yeah, we'll keep looping through you on that, Grant.
Did everybody see that screen I popped up a while back by accident?
There's one where the orbs are in motion.
Can I just bring that one up again, Grant?
You take over the screen at the bottom. There's a green share icon there. You can take over the screen. Look in the very middle of the screen there. There you go.
Now this one was also taken in Sedona, and the reason it fascinates me so much is because everything in that picture is relatively stationary, with the exception of the orbs, and they all have tails on them.
You're right. Yeah.
So it's not a blur thing, you know. You can tell the orbs are just moving fast, whatever they are. So I want to believe that they're, you know, kind of sentient beings or spirits of some kind. Who knows?
Something scared them.
Wow.
That's our contribution. Thanks for people for listening, because we're quite interested in seeing what anybody else thinks out there on this.
I'm sure anybody else got any comments, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who've encountered orbs and this kind of phenomena.
I'd like to speak up just for a moment.
Okay, you can stop the share screen, Miles. You go to the stop share.
Stop share. Gotcha.
Okay. Is this Kim?
Yeah, hi. Yeah.
Hi, Kim from Michigan. And you have C5 events, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, myself and Marcel Vidovic.
Yeah. Who is the big photographer for the Stephen Greer events, correct? He's got a lot of stuff he's photographed around the world.
Yes, he's quietly on here listening to all of us.
Oh, there you go. Hello.
Yeah. I don't know if he'll show his face. I just ratted him out.
Hi, I'm on. I'm not hiding.
There you are. Hi. I wanted to say these are amazing photos, and thank you so much for sharing them. It seems to me, and I could be wrong, but in my observation, there seems to be a connection between the photographer and these orbs that are responding to that person. You could have several people in a group taking the same photos with various pieces of equipment, and that one person consistently seems to be getting the shots. It's almost as if there's an intelligent communication that's going on. They are responding to you two. They are anticipating you coming out and taking these photographs, and they're showing themselves in the most beautiful displays. And I've always sort of felt a little envious, because I've studied, I was up in California in the Mendocino Mountains, and there was a woman there, and she had this camera that was a normal camera, and she was taking the pictures and they were showing up, and I was taking the pictures and they weren't showing up, and I kept thinking it had to be the equipment. But I don't believe that's the case. I believe that these intelligent forms, these beings, are definitely wanting to be photographed. Otherwise, they wouldn't show themselves.
That's very interesting, Kim, because when I go out with my big camera, I don't catch the orbs. The most success we have is with that point and shoot.
Yeah.
Even the camera on your phone doesn't work as well as the point and shoot.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then once you activate that, once you have that connection, you're going in, you're doing a little meditation, you're making that connection through coherent thought, and then you're going on your way to enjoy whatever happens, right? You're just open to the experience, and so that's really wonderful.
I'll just throw in just a small piece of history. I don't want to throw the orb discussion off the rails, but I lost my son when he was 19 years old, and I found it very interesting when Grant talk and discussions that Grant's done about people finding feathers, because when I spoke with him through a channeler just after he passed away, he told me that would be the sign that he would leave when he was thinking about me. So we have been finding feathers for years in the darndest places. Wow. One of the most amazing was, we had a big upright piano, and we were taking it apart because we couldn't give it away. So we were disassembling the piano, and we lifted the big heavy keyboard off, and there was a feather underneath the keyboard, and the piano is 100 years old. So, you know, sometimes it's just weird.
Wow.
So I know he's around. You know, you have different connections, different places, right?
Beautiful story. I'll have to add that to my book. That's incredible. And you do have the connection between that's where we're getting to this physical mediumship thing, where you get that kind of really bizarre sort of messaging that's not a verbal message, but it's like a right brain visual message that you have to interpret, but it is a message nonetheless.
Yeah, and there's different things that happen on kind of a regular basis. So, the whole belief and the veil is very thin. I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. Marcel, can you weigh in on, maybe I didn't hear you right, but did you say that at times you know when to shoot? Because you do a lot of photography, a lot of shooting at C5 events around the world. Is there this phenomena where it basically, you're sort of being directed where to shoot and when to shoot?
Yeah, for me, I get a feeling. Actually, we just finished an event in White Sands, New Mexico, in Roswell, New Mexico, a couple months ago. And we went out into the C5 protocol, and I had a ground contact. Two of us experienced ground contact. And when I came back to the circle, and I had my camera that I had set up, that I was ready to videotape whenever something occurred. We had something at a zenith that actually my son was with us, pointed something out. And within 5-10 minutes, something said, stand up, take your camera, and point it at Orion. So I took my camera, I pointed at Orion, I just hit the record button. And and I let it record. I usually don't let it run for an extended period of time. I let it run for about 12 to 18 minutes. I can't quite remember. But as I did that, I started seeing all these flash bulbs in different parts of Orion's belt. Yeah, I got a flash bulb here, I got another flash bulb here, and then all of a sudden this craft comes right down the center. I mean, right down the center of my camera, right through Orion's belt. I actually recorded. I can share it with you. But something said, go up, put your camera on. At that specific moment that I had my camera, I probably captured maybe 20 flash bulbs around Orion's belt in that 12 to 18 minute period, along with a craft coming down. And then I can't share a lot of what transpired with our transmissions, because we also have some transmissions that it's two-way communication, and we're very active. And we were receiving messages at a specific frequency along the same time. So two of us experienced a ground contact. We had I had that feeling to point the camera in the sky at that point in time. We had a flash bulb, we had the craft, and then we had the audio transmissions all occurring concomitantly. So it was quite an experience. Wow. But again, it's a feeling for me. And whenever I'm with Greer or with Kim's group or another group that we're doing C5 and I'm participating in, it's just a feeling. I have a feeling that I should point my camera here, and that's all it is. I can't explain it.
Wow.
Aside from that.
And the most you've had, like you talk about these flashbulb things, you've had what, 64 in one incident or something like that?
Oh yeah, that was an event that we did in Big Arb, Wisconsin last summer in June, where we had one craft flash us the third night 64 times, and I recorded the whole thing.
Yeah, and people believe this is a satellite thing. Which I can't remember what the name of the satellite is, but I actually looked it up because we had that event. I had 8 flashes over my head in Sedona or in Shasta in 2017. And these flashes from satellites, they only occur once and they're actually on track. They actually track them, and you can tell to within the minute in what part of the sky this is going to happen. And that's when the sun hits the panel of a satellite, but they know exactly when it's going to happen. So you may get one flash, that's it. I mean, and you guys are getting 64, we got 8. And I remember when I saw it, I said, that's the best you could do, because I had heard the stories about Zendra's open and aliens and the Zendras and stuff. And I was kind of disappointed. But when you go back and think about it, where you get these flashes, it is pretty dramatic when you actually see these things, like huge flash bulbs in the sky.
That is correct. We also verify, make sure it's not a satellite. So we'll use the satellite apps to make sure it wasn't a satellite that we're actually photographing, because I mean, we're all out in the field. We're a research team. You know, we're making contact, but we also want to make sure that, you know, we're not tracking a satellite. So none of our charts or our apps show that it was a satellite for all these occasions. If it is, we won't. I won't put it in the. I mean, I'll record it, but I won't share that video. The one in Roswell, it was 12 something, where all the satellites were now being hidden by the Earth's shadow. So obviously there was no satellites that we tracked in the applications or the website that we look for when the satellites were passing, and also they were beyond the point where they're actually visible where we were at, and it was pretty fascinating.
That's another thing people I don't think realize is that I think it's 90 minutes after sunset, there are no satellites because the satellites, they're up at like 500 miles or whatever, but they're already in the shadow of the Earth. So once you get past 90 minutes, anything you see is not going to be a satellite because the sun is actually on the other side of the Earth. And the other thing you mentioned, this thing about the apps, which I was pretty amazed because you and I were together with Kim at Shasta in August. And I remember that event that I think came in and everybody got excited and they go, holy cow, look at that thing. And then someone goes, that's the International Space Station. And it's just dead quiet.
But it's such a
it's
phenomenal sight to witness, and you get excited because, you know, you're making contact, but you have to be realistic. Hey, it's the ISS. So it's a good way to train your eye and yourself as well as to make sure you're diligent when you're presenting this information. And
one last thing, and then everybody else can jump in with comments. Kim mentioned the fact that it's associated with the person, which is what I believe as well. And that is like, and the example that you guys had with you and Kim when you left the circle, we were sitting in the circle doing the mantra, and you went to get a lens or something for your
yeah.
And of course, you guys tap into this. I had no idea until the next day you guys had this event, but it's you and Jeff and Kim are in this event, and you're feeling the energy, and this being is that whatever is happening outside the circle, and the rest of us are just sitting there totally oblivious to what's going on.
I'll let Kim jump in, but I'll just give you my part. What I learned from that experience is don't be bashful. Share everything. And I felt bad the subsequent day in the fact that Enrique is holding this event. He's looking for any type of sign. Yet we had a really profound experience that would have helped the group and would have helped Enrique discern what transpired. But yet you question, did we really see something? There was that billowing smoke. Did it mean anything? So I learned a big lesson, but for me, something kept saying, go change your lens, get your lens, because when Enrique breaks the group up, we're going to enter the night phase and go get your lens that can photograph at night. So and I didn't have to do it, but something just kept saying, get up, go get your lens, go get your lens. And that's when I said to Kim, I said, hey, could I hang on to your shoulder? Because I had that really bad knee. And then we both started walking up, and apparently Jeff was seeing something in the woods in that direction that Kim and I were not aware of. And I'll let you tell your portion, Kim.
Yeah, well, the energy was building as we were in the circle. And I saw 3 flashes of light over the trees in front of me and 1 over my left shoulder, which is the one that Jeff saw. He got out of his seat to go check it out. Marcel gets up to go get something out of his tent. I needed my glasses, and it's pitch black. So I grabbed Marcel's hand and Jeff's hand, because we're walking in the dark on this mountain, and we start moving towards the direction where the flash was. And Jeff was really consumed with that. We started walking up this path towards the tent, and Marcel and Jeff veered off to the left just a few steps away, and Jeff was pointing into the woods what he was talking about, what he was seeing. I took a few more steps forward, and this white billowing energy was rolling up like smoke towards me at a pretty rapid pace, and it was really very whitish, and it rolled up in front of me, and then it surrounded me so I couldn't see within seconds anything outside of it. And right in front of me was a sort of crystalline white energy. It looked something like this. And it was about maybe 3.5 feet tall. It was taking a form. And I sat with it for a minute or so, and I could feel my whole nervous system amplifying, as if my frequency was just automatically being raised in this space. And then I started, what happens when you get into that, your logical mind starts kicking in, and you're like, I need something normal in this experience. And so I'm like, Marcel. And then I turned around and I said, hey, you guys, I'm having an experience over here. And they turned, and Marcel comes walking forward, and then we were both standing there for another couple of minutes, and it amplified again, and Marcel was witnessing it as well. And so the two of us, it feels when you have somebody else that's seeing what you're seeing, it gives you some validation into the experience. Otherwise, it's just your own unique experience. But I wish that we would have stayed with it. And this is where I started to feel like Enrique needed us back at the circle. And I also was unsure of what was happening. So there was a little bit of that. So I said to Marcel, we got to go back to the circle. And so I literally broke the chain of experience, and I'm not going to do that again. But, you know, we get into these moments and we all come to our own personal edge of what we're able to handle. And then, you know, that fear kind of kicks in. So we stepped away from it. But it's what happens when we go on these events. There's things that happen that may not seem too significant or profound, but your mind, it doesn't stop working on it for days and weeks after you come home. And then you begin, it becomes, the profundity of what you experience, like the 64 flashes. We were watching them and it was really beautiful and loving, but it didn't really sink in until later. Like, my God, that's amazing that happened. What happened in Shasta was amazing. And so that's what happened with us, but things really got activated.
And if I could just add real quick, what's really fascinating about that one moment is it was very individualized. My experience was different than Kim's, and it was different than Jeff's. And the time frames that we recall are totally different, but there's a commonality. When we discussed the next day what we saw, what was it? You know, it's 3.5 foot, and I see the billion lights, and I had a different experience emotionally. But what I'm saying is it's very individualized. It's what you're feeling, and it doesn't mean that you're right or wrong. It's the experience that you're having, and being able to just be open and share that, I think, is really important, and that's what I got out of that experience.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you shared it, because I always tell the joke that on Saturday morning, Enrique was doing those exercises, and then Kim did her breathing exercise, and I was going like, man, if it was dark, I'd be gone, man. I didn't come here to do exercises. It was like, because if you don't do the exercise, you get killed. And so, I mean, I'm glad you guys shared, because I mean, it was just phenomenal in the circle of 34 people when everybody started sharing their experiences, and you suddenly realized there was all this stuff going on. Even the one where, and this, I'll stop talking after this, but the Sunday morning we're talking, and then suddenly Enrique starts telling about this story, like you guys went up on the mountain and Kim was trying to do the crystal ceremony and stuff. So the group was all broken up and there was all this stuff happening. And then Enrique comes back from the mountain and they do some more chanting or whatever in the circle, and then they go to bed, and Enrique suddenly has 5 bars on his cell phone, which he's never had on Mount Shasta, and he starts reading the news and stuff, and 4 o'clock in the morning he says, well, you know, we got to get up at 7 to start a new session, and so he decides better go to bed at 4 o'clock. He goes to the outhouse and he sees this object, and that's when he starts looking for somebody, and he sees the entire mountain is lit up with lights. And he thinks of the idea of the city of Talos that's, you know, rumored to be underneath the Mount Shasta, and the whole, like, you don't see one light on Shasta. Forget about an entire city of lights. And he sees it, and then he's looking for Marcel, because Marcel has all this high-tech equipment, and he's stumbling around in the dark, and he's trying to find his camera. He can't remember where he put his camera. And so this event is taking place, and that's when Enrique said he suddenly realized this may be contact, because usually with contact it's like you're by yourself. They want you by yourself. And he's madly trying to find someone to film this, somebody to be a witness to it. And when they tell the story, and then these Latino girls from Enrique's group in LA start talking, and you're going like, wow, I mean, all this stuff happened and I was sleeping, and it was just phenomenal that this stuff goes on. And I'm thankful to you people that you did share what you did, because, you know, when I wrote all this stuff up, it was a fascinating story of what happened in 2 days that, you know, Saturday morning, I was ready to leave. I thought this was the biggest waste of time I had ever, you know, traveled across the country to do exercises. It was like, no way, I'm not doing this.
we hope you come back.
Yeah. And you have events in Michigan, right?
Oh yeah. We'll invite you.
In Michigan for people that might be near there.
By the way, I just want to add, don't dismiss these subtle things. 3-4 years ago, I dismissed it all. And it's amazing when you really tune in and analyze what's going on, it's really profound. And so don't dismiss these things. Even those beautiful orbs you were showing years ago, I thought they were just dust. I'm dismissing all this. And then we're photographing, there's people in our group that photograph these incredible orbs, and it's very meaningful. So if you get in that mindset, just accept it. I mean, it's difficult to explain. It could be so many. It could be a variety of things. It could be interdimensional beings, whatever it may be. Just accept it and don't dismiss it. Don't let your brain try to rationalize that it's just dust or a light flare and so on. That's the only recommendation I would
Beautiful,
add.
thanks. And sometime if you come on another one, we'll let you take over the camera. I did when I interviewed you. Took over the screen. And you have some pretty phenomenal stuff that you've filmed over the years in different events. So maybe we'll get you next time. You can come on and get it prepared and come on the screen, and people can see events from all around the world. Because you've had a couple of encounters. You've had the being in New Zealand. You had 24 beings that you sort of saw in 2017 when you were across the road from us. We had the 9 flashes. I thought, oh man, I got to talk to Enrique's group. I got to find out what these guys are doing. And then I started hearing the stories of what you guys were filming and doing on the other side. And I felt like we were sort of sleeping. We had nothing happen compared to what you guys were having. And we had these 2 actual CE5 events happening across the road from each other. And we really didn't talk. The 2 groups didn't talk. And yet both were experiencing this very phenomenal stuff in the sky.
That's so true. Yeah, that was a profound event, and Kim was there. That was the cesium initiation, and it was an incredible event. It changed my life and added profoundly to my life.
Mm-hmm. Every year is different, though. Every year we have a different group of people. The coherency is different, and the exercises are designed to bring us from that head space into the heart space. The more coherent the group is, the deeper and more profound the experiences may be for us. And so every year we go there with the eyes of a child, with an open heart and no expectations. And then we wait to see what happens.
Another crossover that because I do this whole, I'm looking at all different contact modalities. So when we were in there, and the most powerful thing that happened to me, because remember when everybody came back from the mountain, because they had that experience up on top of the mountain there. When they came back, they said, we're so sorry, because you were going to do the crystal ceremony. Enrique had left you in charge, mm-hmm. and you and Maddie were going to do the crystal ceremony. And everybody came back and said, we're so sorry you didn't get to do the crystal ceremony and stuff. And we had this other event. And I said, no, that was the most powerful thing I learned. Was I used to think the thing about raising the vibration was all nonsense and stuff. And then what happened, and you can clarify this, what happens is, they get a message. Mario gets that message about the triangle up on top of the tree is bent over, and everybody goes heading off to this event up on the top of the mountain. They get this idea that they have to go for this contact. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is everybody leaves the mantra stop, the meditation stops. Everybody's sort of sitting in the circle. These cars are moving around. People are leaving and stuff. And the energy in the circle that when you were going to do the crystal ceremony drops right off. Mm-hmm. And so I used to think this was all sort of nonsense, this raising the vibration. And now that I'm doing the physical mediumship, what you see in physical mediumship is the first thing they do is they sing songs. That it doesn't work unless you raise the vibration. And they have this bizarre thing. There's one group, I think in Illinois, that uses ZZ Top to raise the vibration in the group. And if they don't do it, it doesn't happen. And it's this idea about raising the vibration. And you see it in these other contact modalities. It's not just in the Mission Rama protocols. It's in all sorts of stuff. And it's this very important lesson to me is that your reality is determined by whatever frequency you're tuned into. And if you want to interact with that frequency, you've got to change your vibration.
Yeah, it's essential. We're striving to come together for coherence, and people are coming together with different walks of life and different frequency energy. And so we want to do a lot of clearing of that. We want to clear that subconscious mind, get into a coherent space, really open the heart, like not just hold hands, but really feel that brother and sisterly love, really opening up. So there's a period in the beginning, especially where we're, with each exercise that we do, with each meditation that we do, that we're bringing that together. We find Saturday night to be quite potent as a result of that. But yeah, but if you think about sound, making a sound, chanting a mantra, it heightens that vibration. It does the clarity without the thinking mind. We got to get out of the analyzation of the experience and open ourselves up to the coherency. And we find that when that happens, even with like a singing bowl, usually we'll have a slew of contact right after we do our meditation, after we do the singing, the chanting, the bowls, whatever it is that we do. In that hour beyond that, there's a lot that goes down on, and then you'll feel it die down, and then we'll come together again and we'll pick it back up again. And then we'll have more experiences, because if these other beings that are interacting with us, that are communicating with us, they're functioning from a high frequency, right? And they're lowering their frequency. Our job is to elevate our frequency so we can find the common ground, that common space. When we're, like, for example, for the CCM crystal activation, there's an activated field that will be near us that they're harmonizing so that they can come down and work with us. But it's only sustainable for so long. And what happened in the case of Shasta last year was, yeah, we created that field, but then when half the group left, the energy was disrupted. And it was disrupted for such a long period of time with all the trucks and the commotion that it wasn't going to be built back up again. I spoke to Enrique after. I wrote to him and I expressed to him, because there was a lot of learning in that experience, and he said that happens a lot.
Oh,
yeah. But we have a couple channels in our group, and I know Enrique and there's others in the community as well. But we've been getting messages, guidance from the beings that are working with us already from the time we left Shasta last August, leading up to this next event, and how we can develop that next level space to continue the work and to keep proceeding forward with it. Wow. So that's in process.
Beautiful. And that'll be in August again?
Yeah. We're waiting for Enrique to set the date, but it's usually the first weekend in August.
Yeah. That's better than September, because for people who go to Shasta, because we're talking about a lot of events here, Phoenix, and you're doing C5 events in Michigan, and Mount Shasta is the one everybody always wants to go to. But I come from the coldest major city in the world, and I wasn't prepared. You got to be prepared that it's like 85 during the day, and it's like at freezing or just below freezing at night. It can get very, very cold up there because you're very high up on the mountain. So people have to be aware of that. And so you got to realize that when you're doing this meditation and this mantra thing, you're doing it in the cold. I mean, people are sitting there, and it's very, very cold. And I remember you walking around, you had that white hoodie on, and you were outside the circle, and I go, what's Kim doing outside the circle? What's going on? And you guys had that field where the ceremony was going to take place, where you were picking up the vibration, the energy in that thing. I didn't know what you guys were doing. I said, man, something's going on there, man. We got to sit here, and these guys, they're seeing a UFO or something's going on. But that's the idea, is that you have these events all over the country, and maybe we can somehow get a list for people who are around, because a lot of people want to go. We have the Winnipeg thing that we're now going to plan, Michigan, Mount Shasta. There's these events all over the world where people can go, and people like you and Marcel and people have done it before, and they know exactly the protocols to follow and what to do.
Hey, Grant. Hey, do you hear me? Sorry,
yeah.
Can I chime in here?
Good.
How you doing, Grant?
This guy does the covers for our Desta's book and my book. He's just he does everybody? A lot of good documentaries. Matt, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
How's things in Toronto?
Pretty good. Staying busy. It's not that wintry here.
You're the pond guy. Matt the pond guy. You do ponds. Anybody in Toronto?
Yeah, UFOs and ponds. That's my whole life.
Okay. What do you got for us?
I sent you an email the other day about the Chris Mellon briefing that was on his blog a few years back.
Yeah.
And I just saw a video, and I think this is pretty interesting stuff. Did you happen to have a chance to look through it? Did you look at the,
I was there when it happened. And
right, that's what I thought, yeah.
No, what happens is Chris Mellon, who's he used to be in intelligence inside the Pentagon during the Clinton administration, or the
he was pretty high up there. He's
he's been retired for 15 years. So he joins To the Stars Academy, and then this event happens where there's a guy by the name of Twitter Jay is on his website, and suddenly there's all these briefings and documents and stuff on Chris
That's right,
Mellon's website, and he grabs all this stuff and he downloads it, and then he puts it out, and then Chris Mellon shuts his website down and says, oh, that somebody hacked my web. There was all these stories. The website was hacked, and I always think it was a setup that they basically wanted. Hang on. They basically wanted this stuff out. So this stuff leaked out on the website. But what you get there is material on different types of briefings and stuff that they were doing, government stuff. The one problem I found with it was there's 2 documents that came off that site, which I said, this proves that it's a setup. And one was everybody was going after Lou Elizondo's resignation letter. Everybody said, well, why doesn't he put his resignation letter? Well, the one thing that appeared on there was his resignation letter. So when they told me his resignation letter was on there, I said, oh, there's something wrong here. Send me the letter. And of course, they sent me the resignation letter. And of course, it didn't have a date on it. So it's like you're resigning from the Pentagon, this letter, and it's being sent to the Secretary of Defense, which is not who you resign to. You resign to your boss, and it didn't have the date on it. So it was almost like the material was being leaked and it had plausible deniability. The other thing that they had this girl who was one of the pilots for the Nimitz, and there was a document that dealt with a briefing they'd given her, and on this document they have everything about her, like her phone number, her email address, her exact age, date of birth, all this sort of stuff. And all the other people in the document, it was like they were like with some of the other pilots who were saying, oh, maybe born in Michigan, is about 40 years old, no dates, no email addresses. And it was almost like they wanted people to go in after this girl. So I think that's my theory, to answer your question, is I believe that a lot of stuff is being leaked into the UFO community, which has plausible deniability. So it's the real material, but it's being surrounded by disinformation, so that people like me will pick it up, or skeptics will pick it up and say, look, it's got no date on it, it's a phony letter. It probably is the real letter. It's just it was altered and the date was taken off it to give them plausible deniability.
Right. I wonder though if the one that's interesting to me is slide 9, where it talks about DoD threat scenarios, ATIP sub-focus areas. And the bullet points on that list are pretty interesting. And it'd be interesting to find out if, some way to verify if Mellon actually did brief anybody, like hanging out with senators and stuff, because the stuff on that list is pretty interesting. You got psychotronic weapons is one of their interests.
Yep.
Cognitive human interface,
yep.
Penetration of solid surfaces,
yep.
Instantaneous sensor disassemble, I don't know what that means, alteration, manipulation of biological organisms, anomalies in the space-time construct, and unique cognitive human interface experiences. So, I mean, if there's a possibility that they're looking into this,
yeah, and
there's private corporations looking into this and, doing research at like Skinwalker Ranch and stuff, that's pretty interesting. It'd be pretty
okay.
neat.
Well, I can sort of clarify that, because that is exactly what it's about. Chris Mellon, they're doing the briefing, and what you do if you're in the military, that's why if Donna Lynn's around, she can talk about From Fear to Love was the name of her book, is that if you're the military, you've got a million enemies. You got the Mexicans and the Chinese and the Europeans and the Russians, and it's like everybody's an enemy, because if you don't have an enemy, you as the Secretary of Defense aren't going to get any money to build weapons. That's what it's all about. It's protecting us from all the bad guys, and everybody's going to be a bad guy. And so when you're talking about this, like the disassembly of whatever it is, that was Skinwalker Ranch. What they're talking about there is, the story was that you went to the DIA went to Skinwalker Ranch, but they didn't go because of UFOs. If you look at the Skinwalker Ranch, there was basically no UFOs there. It was orbs, it was portals opening up, it was stuff reappearing, disappearing, which is called apportation phenomena, which almost every experiencer's had. I can say to an experiencer, you've had all these experiences, and then I'll say, do you ever have anything fly around the room? Did you ever have something fall out of the sky on like feathers or whatever? And they go, oh yeah. And that's what they were looking at Skinwalker Ranch, because they had the 4 bulls were taken. They suddenly disappear out of the corral, and those 4 bulls ended up in a locked trailer. They had, the post hole auger ended up 50 feet in the air. Suddenly it was gone, and they find it the next day up in a tree. That's this whole idea. So they're looking at, or when they tried to film it, If you look at John Alexander or George Knapp, they will describe the fact that the phenomena was always one step ahead of them. They could not identify the phenomena. They could not film it. And the one time they had the camera, and they had these two cameras facing each other on these poles. And then the event happens. I think it's a cattle mutilation or something happens, and they go, "We've got this on camera." And they go to look, and the camera, they ripped the wires out of the camera. So you have this thing where every time they went to film it, they couldn't film it. It's the same thing that happens with psychics. There's a famous psychic who was making stuff appear and disappear. There's a guy by the name of Stanley Krippner, who was a parapsychologist, who went down to investigate this guy. And in 1.5 weeks in this investigation that they took these university people down there to investigate, they had 95 apport things appear and dropping out of this room and stuff. And they said the same thing. They could not film it. They would set up the camera and it would happen in the next room. And it's almost like the phenomena is playing with us. It wants you to say, what's going on? What's all this stuff? So that was what this document is about. They're briefing, and that's what it comes down to. You need a fear factor. So what you do is you say to the government, this could be an evil phenomena. Because if you go into the Senate and you say, oh, these are nice, loving beings from another dimension or from another planet, they're going to tell you, I mean, get out of here and don't let the door hit you and you know what on the way out. Who cares? Unless you can present a fear scenario that you scare the living daylights out of the senators or the congressmen, and that's how you get money. They say, oh man, this could, they could come and eat us, and that's how they get the money. So that's what this briefing was, is to set this very high level of fear inside the lawmakers inside the United States. Because if you look back in the 1990s, or in the when Hillary Clinton was running for president, John Podesta was her campaign manager. If you look at Leslie Kean's book, their famous New York Times bestseller book, what you see in that book is the fact that John Podesta and her were working together. John Podesta actually helped her file a Freedom of Information Act request with NASA to get the documents on the Kecksburg crash from 1965. So John Podesta was really into this. And what they said at that point was, we need to finance UFO research because it might be a threat to airline traffic. It might run into planes. And I guess the congressman went, come on, just get out of here. So they upped the ante. Now it's not, you're going to interfere with planes. They're going to shoot down sink our Navy ships. They're going to shoot our planes down. They could take over and stuff. And when you create that riveting fear, it's almost like it's almost like organized crime. The fastest way to remove people from their money is to scare the living daylights out of them. And that's what they're doing, is they're trying to scare the Congress into the fact that they need to finance this, that this is a possible threat, and we need money. And we walk out with suitcases full of money, which is what Melinda Leslie said Jim Semivan told her. She said, what would I do if, and he's the big CIA guy in To the Stars. She said, what could I do that would really upset you and that you would stop talking to me? And he said, mess with the money. And that's what it is. You're trying to get this financing of UFO stuff through Congress. And the only way you're going to get it is to scare the living daylights out of Congress. Otherwise, you're not going to get any money.
Right. Thanks for that, Grant. You're amazing, man. You're so full of information. I love listening to chat.
I have nothing else to do.
But
I have no life.
Same here. So I think the interesting thing, though, to me, is just speculating how much are guys like Mellon and TTSA and Bigelow, like how much do they know and how deep does it go? Like, are there these private corporations that are really studying remote viewing on a high level? And
I can comment on that. I can comment on that.
And then after that, I'll finish. And then I just want to ask you if there's any updates on the TTSA or anything new.
Yeah, I'm not following it that much. I basically follow guys like Ron Pandolfi, Kit Green, John Alexander, all these people who may have an insight on what's going on, because Bigelow's got the money. And if you read Jim Peniston's latest book about Rendlesham Forest, it's like 700 pages or whatever. He actually talks about the fact that they are doing this experiment with DNA. So they're taking experiencers and they want to check your DNA because it comes up very, very strange. There's something in the DNA that they're altering DNA to give you a signal. You can pick up the signal. And the other thing is they talk about this caudate putamen. So they give an MRI to experiencers and it comes up with the fact that the caudate putamen has extra fibers in it. Like it's being used for more more than just its regular thing. So what they did is they went to John Burroughs, and they gave John Burroughs disability in exchange for his DNA, because John was saying, I was injured at Rendlesham Forest, and you know, I should be on disability. And so in exchange for his DNA, he got no questions asked disability. They made the same offers to Peniston. And what I asked John Burroughs was, I said, John, if these were evil aliens that sort of, got you sick and interfered with your heart because he had a big heart problem, I said, you weren't the only guy. I mean, Peniston touched the damn thing. He was standing right there, and Kabanzak was with you as well. So why were you the only one injured, John? And John never answered the question. And that's the whole thing. If it's terahertz energy, which is what they say it was, then everybody should have been injured, because they were all very, very close to the thing. So when Kit Green, who's sort of like the lead CIA guy, he was the guy that I believe was the head guy that briefs the president on UFOs for about 3 administrations. He's now working with Bob Bigelow, because when Peniston was contacted, he said, I'm not going to fold like Burroughs did. I'm going to find out what the heck these guys are doing. So he says to Kit Green, he says, okay, who are you working for? What are you doing? And that what Kit Green, the CIA guy, told him is there's a team of 8 people. I'm part of a team of 8 people, and the government is involved. So there's government money, and Bigelow's involved. So there's 8 people that are involved in this program. So it'll be Kit Green, Colm Kelleher, it'll be John Alexander, it'll be who else? Nolan, Hal Puthoff, all these guys, and they're working on this thing, and they're looking at experiences, which is what I said at the beginning of this broadcast. I said, if you want to know what's going on, you've got to deal with the experiencer. Why are these people on this broadcast today having contact? What's going on? Who are they talking to? What's the message? And so the government is doing the same thing, and that's exactly what Kit Green admitted to Peniston. But Peniston didn't give him his DNA. He said, if I give them my thing and take this free money, the disability, I'm bought. They bought me. It's not right. I'm not going to take it. So he turned it down. But he did get admission from Kit Green that yes, there is this member of 8 people, and they're looking at meditation, they're looking at brain patterns, they're looking at DNA, and it's all got to do with the experiencer. They're running this program that's partly funded by the military and partly funded by Bigelow to try to figure out what's going on. So I think that's it's encouraging that at least they're looking at the right people. But again, it's going to come down to this fear thing, that if you want to get any money, you have to run that fear scenario. Otherwise, nobody's going to give you any money. Who cares? If it's a public interest thing, or it's just interesting, that doesn't mean anything. All the money is going, you've got a $735 billion defense budget in the United States. That's where the money is. And if you want to walk out with a suitcase of money, you better make sure that you've got some sort of threat that's coming after us.
Right on. Thanks, Grant. I'll let someone else chat and maybe change the subject.
Okay. Anybody
Thanks,
else got some people that haven't maybe spoken before? Have you got anybody, Desta, that wants to speak?
Yep, Mark.
I have a question for you.
Great, go ahead.
Yeah, what do you make out of the phenomena? I mean, I know in the past you said you used to think it was extraterrestrials, but now you don't know, and you said, I think, whatever it is, we're a part of the phenomena. But I was curious, what do you make out of it? I know everybody has their own ideas about it, but I'm just curious what you've made out of it since you've devoted so much of your life to the subject.
Yeah, it's as you pointed out, for me, it's changing dramatically in the last little while. That I think there may be an extraterrestrial component to it, but it's way more complex than that. So like a lot of people, when they're dealing with experiencers, they'll say they say, okay, who are you dealing with? And they'll say, okay, Grace. And okay, so what do they do to you? Oh, you're on the table. Yeah, really? What did they probe you? What did they do? And we go down this fear thing. So they say, did it hurt? How did you feel? All this sort of stuff. When I talk to an experiencer, that's not what I ask them. I'm starting to ask them questions like, so you're on board the ship. Who were you dealing with? Grace. Did it have any clothes on? No. Did you see any sex organs? No. Did you ask the alien if he was an alien? And a lot of people have actually done that. And they say, like Sherry Wild, who was on last event that we had here. Sherry Wild says to Da, who was the being, she said, "Are you actually an alien?" And he said, "No, not really." And that's what you start to get when you start asking these questions. You find that they're missing body parts. They don't have any ears. They don't have sex organs. They don't have belly buttons. They don't have nipples. And you start to realize, like, is this really an alien to me? As you and I, Greg, went through a portal and went onto another planet, we would have all those body parts. And when you see these, to me, they're like red flags. Or when I asked Betty Andreasen and her husband, Bob Luca, had their first experience in 1946. Betty and Bob have seen the same beings their entire life. So they started off as little kids having an experience with a being. They're now like 80 years old. They got grandchildren or whatever, and they're old and wrinkled. And I say, let me ask you, did the being ever get any older? And then they say, no, but beings live a long time. There's always an excuse, but no, people will tell you the being never got any older, or I saw him in my last lifetime, or he was with me before I was born. And those are the kind of things I'm reading. I'm writing a book called Extraterrestrial or Maybe Not. And I'm looking at all these bizarre sort of red flags that when you start looking, or for example, you take the Greys. People say, oh, we're dealing with the Greys. I did a PowerPoint, which I'll show at one point. I do a PowerPoint where I start with Betty and Barney Hill. And people don't realize this. The first Greys appeared in 1961 to Betty and Barney Hill. Before that, nobody was talking about Greys. And I actually checked with David Chase, who, when people have experiences, David Chase is one of the guys who can draw what your being looks like. So I went to David and I said, David, you're an expert on reptilians. So when did the reptilian thing actually start? And he said, well, there was maybe one case in the 1980s, and then it was the 1990s. Before that, there was no reptilians. Nobody, and it's like this idea that the phenomena is changing. So you have Greys, and so I take the Greys, and I do a PowerPoint presentation where I take the Greys from Betty and Barney Hill. And for example, you say, look at the things, and people, you'll say, oh, it's a gray. It looks like a gray. It's a gray. And we just sort of assume that. When I see the Betty and Barney Hill thing, and I suddenly hear the thing that they had hats on, I'm going like, what? So we got a baseball team on Zeta Reticuli. It's like a red flag. Aliens are wearing hats. Like, this is crazy stuff. And so you get that. And then I take Betty Andreasen's gray, and I put all these grays, and I start putting them on the screen, one on top of another. Not one looks the same as another. They're all different. And you say, well, it's because they draw them different. Some have got ridges. Some are big eyes. Some are almond-shaped eyes. And you start to realize the fact that there could be like millions of different types of beings. And this idea that Kim and Marcel brought up is that we are part of what we're experiencing. So the idea may be, and this is what I'm going to look at, that if you're in a fear state, you're going to manifest a different being than if you're in a state of love. And what you see with experiencers is you see it may start with the Greys. It may start with a very fearful type experience. And then suddenly they're seeing angels. And this happened. We did a book from Nancy Tremaine, who was on last time. She starts with reptilians, and I do the same thing with the reptilians. They're supposed to be these sex beings, they're raping women and stuff. And then I asked David Chase, I said, so did these reptilians have sex organs? And then he'll say, well, some of them did, but some of them didn't. And it's these weird sort of things. And I mean, like, if you come across the galaxy and the only clothes you've got on is a hooded cloak, like, I mean, these are the weird things that make me think that people are part of it is our manifestation. That, or I give the example, when my father died, the day or the 2 days before my father died, his father came to him. So if you believe in the reincarnation world, my grandfather came, he lived thousands of lives. So why did he appear to my father as his father? He could have appeared as one of 1,000 different lives. He did because my father wouldn't have known who he was. He wouldn't have comforted my father. So when you come across, and I think they're all in the same field, whatever it is, we're in the same field, but we're cut off because our rational analytical mind that keeps us believes that we're in a physical world. We're all in the same field, but the more you can change your frequency, the more you see what's going on, and that they can manifest as whatever they want to manifest. And what's in your head partly determines what you're seeing. There's this interaction that it's not a phenomena independent of us. And Kim brought this up. It's all connected. And so I'm looking at all these different aspects of what are people seeing, and the fact that the Greys didn't appear, the Mantids didn't appear before 1950 or before 1960. It was all human type beings. If you look in the 1890s, there was wooden ships with propellers flying around. I mean, it was like completely different. And these people wore bizarre clothes in the 1890s, the ones that had the encounters, and they said they were from Mars. So are they from Mars? Now we really believe, no, they're really probably not from Mars. They're not from Venus. They're not from the backside of the moon. They're probably from, now we've changed it to star systems, but I think it's much more complex. I think it's going to be much more like a spiritual phenomena where a physical medium, and that's why I'm so interested in this physical medium thing, is that they can bring these people across from the spirit world, and they will be, I'll ask them, was the person that touched you, when you touched that hand or that being in that seance, was it a physical human being? And they'll say, absolutely, it was physical. So if you can come across from the spirit world and become physical, then the same thing I think applies to these beings. They can come across, they can manifest themselves, go back into the field, and that we're all just balls of light, and that we are actually ourselves just manifesting what we, it's the idea of the Wheeler idea, that it's a participatory universe, that we are a big part of what we're seeing. It's not an independent phenomena other than outside of ourselves. We are very much a part of the phenomena that we are encountering. So that's the book I'm writing. It's called Extraterrestrial or Maybe Not. And I've got a lot of stuff. I've got enough for a book that has all these bizarre red flags that you go like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? We just sort of assume these things, and we assume the Greys were always around. We assume the reptilians are all around, and we don't realize that the phenomena is changing as we are changing.
Grant, you're not reading John Keel's books now, are you?
Well, John Keel was the first that did it, and I used to think that him and Jacques Vallée were crazy. When Jacques Vallée said, I'd be very surprised if this turned out to be extraterrestrial, I said, oh, come on. I mean, it's extraterrestrial. Come on, give your head a shake. And it's the old idea, and the analogy I always bring up is when you put a level on the ground. You did a video where you had the levels. Remember, you're building the basement, you did that video where you did? Okay, so when you put a level on the ground, you look at it, you say, the bubble's in the middle. The world is flat. But the more information you get, the more you look at it, the more expanded your information gets, the more you realize, no, it's not flat. And it's the same thing. If you look just on the surface, the sun does go around the earth. It rotates around the earth. Don't tell me it doesn't rotate around the earth. And it's the same thing here. At first you look at it and you say, yeah, it's extraterrestrial. But the more information you start to look at and expand it, the more you go like, wow, I don't know. There's something else going on here.
One interesting thing I've heard recently was Chris Bledsoe on Richard Dolan's channel. And I've heard Chris speak. I know the whole story, but there's one new thing that he said that really made me go do some digging. And he said that he didn't say the name, but he did say that he was talking to some higher up guy. We don't know who he is, maybe some guy in NASA or something. And he said, Chris, he says, my idea of the whole phenomenon is something like this. He goes, have you seen the movie The Adjustment Bureau with Matt Damon? Chris says, no, I've never seen it. And he says, well, in my theory, he goes, that's the way things are. I think it's pretty close to that. So I said, holy shit. I went and watched the movie, and it's pretty neat, man. Like, it's like these guys who can, step into our reality and pull strings and adjust things. So it's interesting, that somebody told Chris that that's what they believe. You ever hear anything about that? Ever talk to Chris about that?
Yeah, well, that goes to Tyler D. If people have read the book American Cosmic, which was a bestseller, written by Diane Pasulka, who was the head of religion and philosophy at North Carolina State University, Tyler D is in that book. And I met Tyler D. I know who this guy is. And he's interacting with beings daily. He's got 40 patents, and he's made a lot of money from these patents based upon a hooded figure. He told me it was a hooded figure standing at the end of the bed. And then, of course, I said to him, I said, well, could you see its face? And he went, no, I couldn't see its face. You can never see its face. It's like you can just predict what's going on. So is he actually looking at a hooded figure, or what is he dealing with? And when they wrote the book, it's basically based on Tyler D, who's this big NASA guy who was brought in by these men in black guys who hired him. And he sits in this room, and the room beside they've got some sort of thing that's able to make them think better. And he's getting these, he's in contact with these beings every day and getting this stuff. This is like a leading guy. And the whole book is based on what this guy was saying. And Kit Green, again, is the CIA guy. And Kit Green apparently had said, if you want to know what's going on, my best impression of what's going on, take off the last couple of chapters of her book and the first couple of chapters of the book, it's in the middle. That's what I think is going on. And it's the same thing. It's this idea, the idea that the universe may be like a hologram or like a giant computer game or something like that, that it's not as physical as you think it is. It's even the idea of what you're seeing is not in your head. There is no TV screen in your head. There are no speakers in your head. It's in your mind, which a lot of people now believe is not in the brain. The brain is part of the process, but it's like a receiver or like a TV thing. It's in the middle, but it's not what's happening. And there is no green. There is no color green. It's all vibration. It's all just a quantum soup. And the idea that when you see something, the quantum potential breaks down and suddenly it becomes a physical particle and all this kind of stuff. That's what I think I'm going to, is that the more you look at it, the more unbelievable the world is, the more complex it is, the less physical it is, and the more spiritual it is. And I think a lot of people aren't going to be happy because a lot of people are in this vested thing that unless you can build a cell phone, I don't care what you think. I mean, if you can build a cell phone and you're into making money and stuff, then that's the real world. But that's not the real world. When you look at what these beings are coming across and the messages that they're bringing, you basically see this idea where, I mean, we have an interview that Sinead and I did with a woman from Great Britain, which I think is one of the most important contacts there is. And these two dyslexic girls in Great Britain start getting these messages from what they call the beings. And it's the same thing. These beings are running around. They have no faces. They have no ears. They're just like black beings with legs. And they're giving them these messages, and the messages are on cue. They're exactly the message of oneness, the fact that we're looking at an illusion. It's not a physical world, all the same stuff that we're talking about. And yet you have these beings who sort of appear as what they want you to think they're appearing as. So are there actually beings, extraterrestrials, who don't have faces, who don't have mouths, nose, ears, stuff like that? No, they're just appearing like that because that's the way they want to appear, and each being will appear differently based upon what's in your head. And that's Desta and I dealt with a guy, an A-level Hollywood guy, who was a pretty high-level guy, and that's what he said, that he was told by his being that when they come into your head, all they can do is read what's in your head. So if you're in a state of fear, they will image and they will use what's in your head to teach you a lesson with fear. That's all they can do. That's all in your head. But if you're in a state of love, well, then they will use love. Whatever's in your head, they will take what's in your head and use that to teach you something. And that it's this idea where it's manifestation. It's not, because we think it's like things are independent objects in time and space. It's all random. We're bumping into each other. And this says it's all interconnected, almost like the ayahuasca experience. When you have the ayahuasca experience, you suddenly realize everything is connected and alive. And that's the world, I think, that the message is coming across. And that's where I'm going. But in terms of them coming through a portal, I used to think they were coming through a portal from another planet. But if they were, they would have these body parts, which really disturb me. And there's a lot of weird things when you start talking about aliens and how they appear that don't make any sense. And it's very common, like especially the thing about the ears, where I bugged Sinead because she has very limited hearing. I talked to her. I said, well, you're from the spirit world. Because in the spirit world, if you compare the spirit world, everything's telepathic. Nobody can speak in the spirit world. And that's the same thing. Aliens are telepathic. So why are they telepathic? It's because they're not living in a world where we're talking like you and I. They're living in something like a spirit world where everything is telepathic. And you start to see these connections between physical mediumship, seances, paranormal phenomena, UFOs. And to me, it all looks like the same thing. It's just a different mask that is being worn by the phenomena that you're dealing with.
Well, Dan Smith on your rabbit hole meetings claimed that he was about the second coming of Christ.
Yeah.
Well,
he's playing off that idea that we are all like fragments of the one, almost like the Bashar. The one is the all is the one. That's one of the biggest messages of the intelligence around the UFO phenomenon, is the oneness message, that we're all fragments. Now, Dan sort of took that to be, like I'm Jesus and I'm God and all this kind of stuff. And everybody believes that he actually believes. I think he's playing off that idea that we are all God. We are all, I even posted this story about the one experiencer who has this encounter with the alien. And the alien says, I've got a gift for you. And this is a 10-year-old kid. and the alien gives this little girl a glass jar with a lid on it. And she looks at it and says, "What's this? There's nothing in here." And he says, "No, look inside." And she puts her hand inside, and the being says, "I've given you the hand of God." She says, "There's nothing in here." She's sort of pushing her hand around inside the glass jar, and he says, "No, look inside the jar. That's the hand. You've got the hand of God." And it's this idea that we are all God experiencing himself, that we are just fragments of the one, that it's all one thing. So I think that's where Dan sort of got carried away with the Jesus thing, that he was God and Jesus. But he does talk about the ultra-terrestrials. I mean, Dan Smith was close to the CIA. So he may have been getting that from the CIA, is this idea that the ultra-terrestrials, even he's basically saying, no, it may not be ET. So they're calling it ultra-terrestrials, or people are talking about the multi-dimensional thing. But the more you look at it, I guess that's my bottom line, the more you look at it, the more complex it seems to become. It may have some extraterrestrial component to it, but it's way more complex than that.
We can say that there's certainly a change in psychic dominance that is underway here, but it's involving so many humans. But I'm looking forward to your book, Grant. Thanks for sharing.
Well, thanks. Mark, do you want to say something? I saw your name come up here.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Hey, look, last I want to do is create a bunch of additional controversy in terms of dealing with these types of concepts. I was initially wanting to respond to the comments made regarding what might be perceived as government control and or fear mongering and the desire by which to control the money.
Yeah.
And I think what's important there too, and in the spirit of, we'll say, empathy, I recall Grant coming in conversation with you regarding Kit Green, and I think it was Green who had said at one point, well, let me ask you, if it's your job and it's your responsibility, what do you do?
Yeah.
And the point being, it's important to remember that nobody's perfect and nobody's able to have all the answers, but there are individuals who, maybe unfairly, but they're in situations where they are tasked with things that perhaps are impossible, which is to preserve the safety of this, that, and the other thing. And so, yeah, it's difficult to maybe be in a space where there's no light or there's no visibility, and you're supposed to imagine the best rather than the worst.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say I'm all for the love and I'm all for the oneness and all that type of stuff, but I also can appreciate that certain experiences maybe have not been shared by all, and therefore, as I've described to Grant, the most difficult thing that I think I face is when you get to that place where there seems to be a connection and there seems to be an idea or a message. It's more of a feeling than it is something that can be described to another person. It almost has to be that person's experience, and therein lies the difficulty. But you try to remain well-rounded in your understanding of all those things involved and all those people involved, and the fact that everybody is really included. There isn't an us and them. It's all things. I think it was last week or the last meeting, and I'm forgetting the gentleman's name now, just because I'm nervous. The artist, and he had said if oneness is a thing, well then it includes everything, good, bad, and indifferent. Yeah. And it's important to remember that, I think, because otherwise. And Grant, I think you're spot on when you talk about this. Otherwise, by creating those labels, you inherently create the separation, because you now have to pick a side. You now have to say that it's this or it's this. And in fact, it may be all those things, but all those things being equal and all those things being important. And the last thing I'll say really briefly is, and we've all experienced this, it may not be desirable, but more often than not, it's only through pain and difficulty have any of us made any progress towards finding solutions for who we need to be in our lives and making progress towards becoming that self. Okay, that's all I wanted to share. I'll leave it to Grant.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if anybody wants to comment, I'll just make a quick comment. I agree. I mean, I've spent, majority of my career chasing the highest level person that I could find to explain what I saw in 1975. And I've interacted with some pretty high level people. And basically, when you interact with them, you have to have empathy, because they're just ordinary people, just like you and I. It may be the belief system that they have, that they believe that they're being paid by the government, and I'm a military guy and I have to do this. It's almost like the analogy I give is the guys who dropped the atomic bomb and melted 100,000 people on the sidewalk. When they landed in the Philippines, they were heroes and they thought they had saved the world. I mean, so you have to realize it's the belief system. It's the belief in separation that causes the problem, that if you believe you're separate from everybody else. So these are just ordinary people who may have gotten into bad belief systems, but I've met a lot of these people and they're just ordinary people like you and I, and they're basing it on their belief system. And you have to have empathy, which means you can only really do what you and I can do, that to whom much is given, much is expected, that you've been given a job to do, light up your own little corner of the world and don't worry about everybody else. That's sort of where I came to that. So I agree with you there that when you talk to these people, you have to have empathy, that everybody thinks they're doing the right thing. And it's the idea is to get the right belief system out there, because if you've got the wrong belief system, you can be the best person in the world and you're going to do some pretty stupid things.
Grant, Drew has been trying to talk for like an hour here.
Okay, Drew, go ahead.
Hey, Grant, how are you? I've lost like so many subjects that I was trying to speak on. But I did want to, the whole reason I did want to talk today was about the, tomorrow is going to be 2/2/2020. This will be the first time that we've had a palindrome like that happen in our timeline in like 909 years. The last time was 111, 1111. So tomorrow I want to speak on that in the sense of I want to back up a little bit. Each one of us is experiencers or experiencing higher consciousness. When we see synchronicities in our life, we see 111 on the clock or whatnot. We get this rush through us, and we start to understand that we're part of something a little larger. So tomorrow we have an opportunity as a collective to have that same type of rush, but go through our collective consciousness. If we have enough of us to recognize the importance of this synchronicity, it's very powerful that we can use that to our ability. Sorry to jump in there and throw this. It's kind of off topic about what everyone's been talking about, but there's been a lot of great conversation. I've been listening the whole time, and yeah, everybody's on their way for sure.
Beautiful. Thank you, Drew. Your interview, Desta has your interview. We'll be putting a two-part interview with you talking about your experience. But the number thing, I linked up with this Sinead out of Toronto, and we've had number synchronicities just off the chart in the last couple of weeks, just really, really bizarre. So Sinead for sure will love the 22222 thing. And there's I don't know if anybody else wants to comment. I know that sometimes Candace is on here, and Candace is a numerologist, but I don't think she's on today. She would have some comments. But has anybody got any comments about this this idea?
Yeah, it sums the six. It's theosophic arithmetic, an esoteric tradition. All those numbers sum to six, and six is the symbol in the heart chakra. So it's all about the heart. It's like pointing to the heart. That would be one comment.
Okay. Wow. Anything else? Desta, you're into this. Speak up.
Yeah, speak.
No, I don't know. I just know there's astrologically, this is a really crazy couple month period as well. So there's lots of things happening and lots of big energies coming and changes for most people anyways.
Is that what you're getting in your new book? Is that in your new book?
No.
You can ask the question next time you chat. You get into your zone there. You can ask them about this thing, because it is big. I was just listening to a lecture where someone said, you know, we get in this number thing, and everything is, you know, mathematical. When you get into other dimensions, it's mathematical there too. It's just different mathematics. That numbers is a big part of it. Just shows that the relationship between different objects in time and space, and that it's all going to have these numbers relationships no matter what dimension you're in.
If I add, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Marcel.
Well, to that 222, about a year before I started my contact movement or making contact, which was back in 2015, I started seeing the number 222 to the point where it was catching my eye. I was seeing it a few times a day. Maybe at first it was once a day or once every couple of days. I mean, that's kind of odd. I just saw that a couple of days ago. And now the 222 appears 3, 4, 5, sometimes, a dozen times a day. It's the most odd experience I've had. I just accept it now. And Kimberly can attest to that because I've been telling her for the last few years, 222 keeps coming up. And thank you for the guys sharing about that being tomorrow. I didn't recognize that. So that's really powerful for me, is that I'll see what happens tomorrow.
Again,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, Grant. I would say tomorrow, I'm a C5 facilitator as well. I want to invite Marcel out and you, Grant. Let's do some out in Crestone, Colorado. I know Marcel's probably been out there with Steven, but I do C5 contact as well. But tomorrow is a time, it's a portal opening, because this is the first time this synchronicity as a collective has been opened up in 909 years. Wow. And it's so powerful because we have even if everybody doesn't agree or doesn't see the synchronicity tomorrow, there's going to be a lot of people that does. And I know Marcel can and some of the other C5 facilitators can attest to Stephen Greer's thoughts on 1% or 10% of the population coming under one idea at the same time. And tomorrow is a perfect opportunity for it because we have so many people that's already going to be there already. So if we can focus our energy there, and tomorrow is a perfect opportunity for C5 people go out and use that energy to connect into that oneness field. And there could be some really amazing contact events that could happen tomorrow.
Wow. So you're operating in Crestone, and how often do you have events, or do you host events, or what do you do there?
Well, I kind of backed away from it, Grant, because I'm just talking about the consciousness aspect of it, because really that's what it's about. Tesla said it best. If you really want to understand the universe, think on terms of vibration and frequency. Yeah. And I would add on to that, release your idea of time, and then you can really start understanding what's going on. So the C5 events, I mean, it's more I can crack more eggs, ego eggs, by talking and reach more people than I can if I have 15, 20 people out there and I show them a ship. I've cracked their egg and been able and open up their path to ascension, and they can go on their way however possible. But really right now I'm sitting in a parking lot. My wife just got done grocery shopping and I'm reaching how many people. So this is my focus now. I'm just I'm really working a numbers game right now.
Beautiful. So we'll help you get it out, because we're helping get your message out so we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, appreciate it, Grant.
And just for your information, Desta actually had an event in Crestone last year, but I think she told it last time. We won't out her again, but she had a bizarre event. They run an event there in August every year. Desta and Paula Harris have an event there, a C5 event where they bring Ricardo Gonzalez in from Peru. So just to let you know, nice. You can check out, you can contact, meet up there, because it's supposed to be in one of the most beautiful places in the world, correct?
Yeah, it's I've been learning more and more about it, of exactly why there's so much activity here. We have a very large aquifer underneath the San Luis Valley, which where Crestone's at in southern Colorado. And the aquifer is the second largest in the world. It's actually owned by the U.S. government. It's like an apocalyptic reserve for water for the U.S. government. Yep. But to go further into that aquifer, it is lined by the whole walls, underside of it is lined by crystals. So there's a lot of energy that's coming from those crystals, emitting from the ground. And I believe that we've got into with some of our other interviews that we've done, Grant, about the crystal, my ideas of crystal energy and our connection to it. And yeah, so it all ties in. But I've been shown that Crestone is one of 5 power points in the world really highly charged for a lot of activity. So
beautiful. Anybody else want to speak? We'll cut it off at 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 22 seconds. So we've got about 12 minutes to go. So anybody that hasn't spoken yet can jump in.
that's perfect. That's perfect.
Grant, you've had any interesting, any new stories with Upworks?
Actually, the one that was told by Walter Zucker on, it was not the interview we did with him. He worked in connection with the U.S. government and claimed that the military, army, and DARPA intelligence type people were interested in, they're interested in everything. They're interested in militarizing seances and ectoplasm and anything that goes. I mean, they look at it, can the Russians use it to hurt us, and Chinese? And so you got to look at it, and then can we make weapons out of this? And he told the story, he was in Atlanta. There was a girl who was, apparently she's in her late 60s now, who was being used like a remote viewer, but she was able to actually sort of move her body to different places, her etheric body, and was spying for the US government in South Korea and stuff like that. And he went to meet her in New York City, tells a story, and he forgot to bring these documents. And he said that, she said, oh, and she went over to this table, put her hands 3 inches above the table, and the documents appeared on the table. And they'd actually, so he was asked, were these copies of the documents? He said, no, they were the actual documents. It's the only time he ever saw her do something like that. So that's there's an interview that Sinead and I do with Walter and with this Kevin Lee. And in there, you're going to see, and I told Desta, and maybe pull these port sections out. So what they're doing is UFO experiences will have a port phenomena, stuff appear, disappear, fall out of the ceiling, poltergeist. They always say, oh, it's just poltergeist. No, it's the same phenomena. And this happens really big in physical mediums. And the two biggest in the world are a guy by the name of Kai Muga from Germany, and this David Thompson from New Zealand. And this Kai Muga, in this interview that we do, that should be going up on my White House UFO Facebook or YouTube channel shortly, we'll have Kevin telling these really bizarre stories of Kai Muga making things appear, because this is the guy that has ports where they're coming out of his eyes, they're coming out of his nose, out of his mouth, out of his ears. And this is a guy they've got gagged, and he has these ports appearing. And that's the idea. They're making these things manifest, which is very common with experiencers, with psychics. Uri Geller was making ports appear. So you'll see this video. I'd say it's one of the better interviews I've done in terms of just totally weird stuff with this seance things, with these physical medium guys. And he does a lot on ports, things that he said he'd actually watch pop out of the guy's hand, where he could actually see it. And the thing, these objects would pop right out of his hand. And this is a guy that they have tied down, or one person has on one side of him, Leslie Kane, the famous person who wrote the book on UFOs. She was in an investigation where she's holding Kai Muga's leg and his hand, and then somebody on the other side is holding his leg and his hand to prove that it's not, being hoaxed. But the apport phenomena is really, really strange. I'm doing a book on apports as well that's pretty close to being done. And when you see this stuff, it's just totally bizarre. I mean, stuff appearing from nowhere and disappearing. And when you actually experience it, so you can, even on here, there could be people, for example, Donna Lynn, who I'm not sure if she did come on, but Donna Lynn has a bizarre apport experience. A lot of experiences. That's the questions I ask them. Did you ever ask the alien if he was an alien? Did anything ever appear or disappear? And people will tell you these real bizarre stories. It's very, very common among experiencers. Okay, we have 8 minutes left.
I definitely had some of those experiences. Some I can't really speak on because they're kind of personal, but yeah, definitely had some experiences. And I do want to comment something you spoke about earlier, the gentleman that had the Jesus God thing. Yeah. I think a lot of people that have experiences with oneness and has experiences with source, that's kind of a process you go through, that you get to this point and the messages you're receiving are so profound that for a moment you do feel like maybe you're the chosen one or you're a prophet or something like that. But if you can push past that and get past that understanding, you can get to the real truth. And the real truth is seeing that religion, spiritual practices are ultimately just languages, different languages that's been given to us, or we have fostered with these higher intelligences to understand them better, to to understand them better. I'm at a loss for words right now, but that's
I'll tell you a funny related story. I just had an interview with a girl by the name of Teza Lawrence. Is a big TV producer out of Toronto and is working in this field. She's very touched. She's not public about anything she does, but she actually uses mediums and channels different energies. And they were actually channeling Jesus at one point. And she said, the medium says, "Oh, Jesus is laughing at you." And she said, "He is. Why is he laughing?" He says, "Because you think you're Jesus. Get off the cross. We need the wood." And so it's this idea that people do get into this idea that they are, you know, either being oppressed by people and feel sorry for me, or that, you know, I've really got this thing going. And basically we are just, I think, just souls trying to learn things, being part of the one, but that everybody's fallen, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Let he who is perfect cast the first stone. So basically we're all just here learning, and we learn from each other, and nobody has all the answers. Nobody's good enough to go to heaven. Nobody's bad enough to go to hell. We're all just floating around in between here, trying to figure out what's going on.
For sure. We're all just lost and trying to figure it out. But I do astral travel at will, and when I got really good at it, I actually astral traveled, and I was there when Jesus was put on the cross, and I got to see the reasons why they crucified him the way he did. So like Christ consciousness, Jesus healed with his hands. The modern day word for it would be called Reiki healing, the understanding of meridian points in your hands and energy that's going in between them, and how we can help our fellow humans heal by helping them with energy flowing through them. So this is the reason why he was actually crucified the way he was. They thought that if they would put the spikes through his hands and through the meridian points in his feet, they could trap his energy inside of his body, and he would be trapped there, and that would be the end of it. But their understanding of the energetic field was very elementary. So that's what I received when I went there. Not saying that let's rewrite the book, but that's my take on it and what I received when I tapped into that time in our history.
Beautiful. Okay, we've only got 4 minutes left, but I have to steal a couple seconds because you reminded me of another really good story. And this is this connection. People ask me, is this ET? I'll give you a direct thing that crosses over into the spirit world. There's a 1988 documentary called UFO Cover Up Live. In that, they tell the story of the aliens have a crystal. And in the crystal, by turning the crystal, it reflects, and you can see the history of the world. And supposedly the rumor was that they'd shown the U.S. military the crucifixion of Jesus in this crystal. This is a story Linda Howe told. Everybody knew this story, that the aliens supposedly had this crystal. If you study Dr. Michael Newton, Life Between Life, and in the first book, you will see that people report being in a library. They open the book, and it's a 3D holographic presentation of their past lives, and it comes across on a crystal. It's exactly the same story. So you have a spirit world story and an alien story, and to me, it's like there's no chance that that's an accident. There's some connection between the two.
Wow.
So we got 3 minutes. Anybody want to speak before we go? There's lots of people who haven't spoken.
I have a quick announcement to make.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a big contact training event that's going to happen the last week of February in New Zealand. One of our contact comrades, his name is Jeremy Cloak. Okay. He and Doug Parker are doing the training. I believe it's a 5-day training. And Jeremy just recently completed his training with William Buhlman at the Monroe Institute for Out-of-Body Travel. He's a sound engineer, and he's extremely adept at consciousness work. And very talented contact person. So he's got 2 spots left on this training if anyone's interested.
Beautiful. And that's where Marcel had his experience, where the being grabbed his finger, correct?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, we got 2 minutes to go. Anybody else?
Anything from Chris Bledsoe lately, Grant?
Chris Bledsoe's son is actually very prominent. Look up Ryan Bledsoe on Twitter. His son is posting, I was starting to post stuff, and it seemed like they were a little uncertain because Chris is always working on this deal in Hollywood. They're trying to sort of option his story. And so when I start putting too much stuff out, all the stories I know, people become uncomfortable. And I saw that Ryan Bledsoe, if you go to Twitter, he's posting a lot of stuff about his father's experiences and the contacts with the government. And really, I asked him for an interview. Originally, the 4 kids were going to all interview with me, and then it was all backed off because he hasn't signed any sort of agreement. But Ryan is talking openly on Twitter, and it's some pretty far out stuff. Julia, go ahead.
Oh, never mind. I just finally got the audio for this thing.
There you go. You got 1 minute to go. Tell us a story. You're from Denver, Boulder, Colorado. You're an expert on all things in terms of books. Any book I can bring up, you know what's the book, and you've got it in your massive library. So welcome. And you've been to some rabbit holes. Actually, the rabbit hole idea started in your house. That was when
right.
That's when we first came up with this idea. Let's have a rabbit hole, and we got on, and we were in your house in Boulder, and people tapped in from around the world.
That's right. Yeah.
Thanks
That's awesome.
Thanks for coming here. We got about 22 seconds to go. So I want to wish everybody a happy 2222 day tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Be aware, and be aware that, as I say, I've read the final chapter, and we win. It's all going to work out. We will go back to the source, and it'll all be okay. So we got 3 seconds, 2 seconds.
I like that. I like that. And portals all open now.
Beautiful. Thank you. Everybody have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Grant.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Phil.
See you guys. See you soon. See someone else sooner.
You betcha. Bye, Desta. Bye, Grant.
Guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.